The girl in the science lab. Eve, been the night security guard at Hill Ridge High School for a little over 5 years. It's a quiet job mostly. I clock in at 10 p.m., grab a coffee from the vending machine, and begin my rounds checking doors, patrolling halls, scanning empty classrooms. Most nights it's dead silent, and that's how I like it. But last December, something happened that made me question everything I believed about this place. It was the night of December 12th. Cold, biting wind outside, and the school heaters were groaning under the strain. I was sitting at the front desk, scrolling through local news when the silent alarm on my control panel lit up red. Motion detected in the science wing. Now usually that meant a janitor forgot to reset the system. Or maybe a window let in a draft. But this time, it felt different. Maybe it was the time 1:20 a.m. Or maybe it was how the temperature in the lobby dropped noticeably the moment that light blinked. I grabbed my flashlight and keys, trying to ignore the chill working its way up my spine. The school was pitch dark, save for emergency exit lights casting dim glows at hallway intersections. My boots echoed unnaturally loud against the tiled floors as I made my way toward the science wing. When I reached the lab corridor, I immediately noticed something strange. One of the doors, lab room 4B, was slightly ajar. That door should have been locked. No one used that lab after 5 p.m., especially not in December. I approached cautiously, my flashlight trembling just a little in my grip. "Hello? Anyone in there?" I called out. No response. Then, as I pushed the door open fully, I heard it. Soft, muffled sobbing. It was coming from the far end of the lab. I stepped inside. Heart-pounding. Sitting alone at a lab table was a girl slumped forward, her face buried in her arms. She wore an old-looking school uniform, long skirt, worn shoes. Her hair was dark, tangled. I called out again. No reaction. Just the continued sound of quiet crying. I took a step forward. The air turned icy, and I could see my breath. My skin prickled with static. Something wasn't right. I reached out to her shoulder. The moment my hand was inches away, she vanished. Not in a puff or a blur, just gone. One blink, and the space was empty. The sobbing stopped instantly. My flashlight flickered, and a sharp static buzz rang through the overhead speakers for a second before cutting out. I backed out of that lab so fast I nearly tripped. I locked the door, returned to my station, and sat there the rest of the night, wide-eyed and shaking. The next morning, I pulled the principal aside. I didn't tell him everything, just said I saw someone in Lab 4B and asked if students could access it late. He went pale, dead silent. Then he asked, "Did you hear crying?" I nodded. He sat down. "That was Eliza," he said. "She died in 1998, chemical accident, lab explosion. Every December, she comes back. Always the same room. Always alone. Always crying." I tried to convince myself it was a dream, or stress. Maybe some janitor prank. But I couldn't shake the image of her, the sobbing girl, the cold air, the static hum. I couldn't sleep the next day. I found myself looking up old newspaper clippings. Eliza Madison, age 17, senior student, honors science program. Died in a freak accident during a late-night chemistry project. Article said the school faced a lawsuit for allowing unsupervised lab use. Her parents moved away afterward. It was tragic, but a ghost? I started noticing patterns. Every year, the alarm in the science wing triggered between December 10th and 15th. Always after 1 a.m. Teachers dismissed it. Students told stories about seeing a girl in the lab window. But no one really talked about it. That week, I stayed alert every shift. I checked that lab twice a night. Nothing, until December 14th at 1:23 a.m. I heard footsteps on the intercom speaker, just soft taps, as if someone was walking barefoot through the halls. Then came the crying again. I followed the sound, heart hammering. I found her in the same seat, But this time, she looked up. Her eyes were empty. No whites, no pupils, just black. Her mouth moved, but I couldn't hear her words. I stood frozen. She slowly reached into her satchel, pulled out a crumpled sheet of paper, and placed it on the desk. Then she dissolved again. Not vanished, but literally crumbled into ash that scattered in the air. The paper remained. I didn't want to touch it, but I had to. I picked it up with trembling fingers. It was a lab report, Eliza's final project. The title, Combustion Chain Reactions. Scrawled. At the bottom in faded red pen were the words, "You let me die." I dropped it and backed out of the room. That night I called a friend, a local historian. He agreed to meet me the next evening. Dr. Raymond Walters was an expert in urban legends and local folklore. He'd studied Hillridge High before rumors of hauntings, unmarked tunnels beneath the building, even a missing janitor from the 80s. But this was the most direct paranormal evidence he'd seen. We met on December 15th. He brought EMF detectors, an EVP recorder, even an old analog camcorder. We set up just outside the lab at 1 a.m. Nothing. For a while. Then, 1:21 a.m. cold air, buzzing. Lights. The door creaked open on its own. We entered slowly. There she was, Eliza, sitting, crying. But now she wasn't alone. Standing behind her was a tall figure in a lab coat, male, shadowed face. Watching her, silent. Dr. Walters whispered, "That's not her." That single quotes S. The teacher, who was on duty the night she died. He was fired. Rumor was he locked her in to teach her a lesson for breaking rules. Suddenly, the lights exploded above us. The lab was plunged into red emergency lighting. Eliza stood, turned toward the figure, and screamed. It was the most heart-wrenching, mournful scream I've ever heard. The man dissolved into mist. Eliza looked at us, eyes full of pain, and whispered, "I didn't mean to disobey." Then she smiled, a peaceful smile. Her figure shimmered, rose toward the ceiling, and faded into glowing dust. The room warmed instantly. The lab report turned to ash in my hand. The EMF meter dropped to 0. She was gone. We locked the room. Sealed it. For good. The school installed motion detectors and alarms, but they've stayed silent ever since. Every December, I bring a flower and leave it outside 4B. No crying, no cold. Just peace, and I hope, wherever she is, she finally made it to graduation. Classroom 305. I wasn't supposed to be there that night. I was just covering for Doan, the regular security guy, who called in sick. "It's an easy shift," he told me. "Nothing ever happens at Ridgeway High." Easy? That's not how I'd describe what happened. It started around 2:05 a.m. I was making my usual patrol around the first floor when I noticed the security feed glitch on one of the cameras. Just static, then a flicker of light. Camera 14, top floor. Room 305. That caught me off guard. I'd been told the top floor was sealed off. Too old, too unstable, and apparently under renovation. There were chains on the stairwell and an access-restricted sign zip-tied across the gate. No one had any business being up there. Curious, I radioed Tom, the school engineer. No response. I tried again. "Tom, you up?" "Got a flicker on 305. Can you check?" Nothing. Against better judgment, I took the elevator to the third floor. The moment the doors opened, a wave of cold hit me. Not a cold, this was raw, unnatural. Like walking into a freezer. The hallway stretched long and empty, bathed in moonlight leaking through grime-covered windows. Every door I passed was padlocked, rusted shut. Until I reached the end. Classroom 305. The door stood slightly ajar. I froze. Something about that door felt wrong. It didn't belong open. The lock was hanging loose from a snapped chain, like Something had broken it from the inside. I pushed the door with my flashlight. Creeeeaak. The room inside looked like a storage area. Desks were pushed aside, stacked in corners, except for one sitting perfectly in the center of the room, a lone desk. And someone was sitting at it. A girl. She wore a faded school uniform, her long black hair hanging like a curtain around her face. She was hunched over the desk, writing furiously, scratching her pen across a notebook like it was the last thing keeping her alive. I stepped in. "Miss, are you okay?" No answer, just that furious scribbling. My fingers tightened around the flashlight. I took a step forward. The air was colder now. My breath came out in fog. Double quotes, "Miss, the school's closed." "You shouldn't be." She stopped writing. Slowly, she lifted her head. What I saw will haunt me for the rest of my life. Her eyes were hollow. Not black, not white, just empty sockets. Her skin was gray and stretched tight like wax. And her jaw, it hung open at an unnatural angle, like it had been broken and never set right. She stared directly at me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a desk. The flashlight flickered. And then she screamed. A guttural, pained, inhuman scream that rang through the walls like thunder. I turned and ran, crashing into chairs, slamming into the hallway. I didn't stop running until I was outside, panting in the parking lot, clutching my chest. I didn't tell the school that night. Didn't file a report. Who would believe me? A substitute guard claiming he saw a ghost on a floor that was supposed to be sealed off? I needed proof. So the next day, I came in early and checked the security footage. Camera 14, 2:05 a.m. For a moment, static, then a flicker. The light in 305 turned on. Through the camera, I saw her, the girl, sitting at the desk, writing. Only this time, something was different. The angle caught her notebook. I could just make out the words she was scribbling. "Why won't they stop? Why won't they stop? Why won't they stop?" Over and over. Then came the part I remembered, the head lift, the stare, the scream. Only this time, she screamed into the camera, and the screen went black. I sat frozen, hands clammy, chest pounding. When I went to show the footage to the daytime principal, it was gone. That entire segment corrupted. Camera 14 just cut out between 2 o'clock and 2:15. But I saw it. I know what I saw. I went to the records office. Asked about the top floor. A secretary, older woman, leaned in and lowered her voice. "You talking about 305? I nodded. She looked down. 20 years ago, a girl named Megan O'Neill went to this school. Quiet. Smart. A little different. She was relentlessly bullied. People wrote things on her desk, pushed her downstairs. One day she snapped. What happened? I asked. They found her hanging in 305. She had carved a message on the blackboard before she did it. My stomach turned. What did it say? She looked up, her voice barely a whisper. "You win." I should have walked away. Called it quits, but something in me needed closure. Needed to face her again. So on Friday night, I came back. This time, with a GoPro strapped to my chest, voice recorder in hand. 2 a.m. Elevator up, doors open. Cold hits me again. The hallway was darker than before. Shadows seemed to pulse. The air was thick, heavy with something unspoken. I stepped into room 305. Same setup. One desk, one girl. This time, she looked up the moment I entered. Her eyes weren't hollow now but filled with something else. Pain, confusion, rage. I raised my hands. "Megan. I'm sorry." She tilted her head. "I know what they did to you. I know how much it hurt." She blinked slowly. Her mouth moved. I strained to hear. "Did you see it? Did you read it?" I nodded. "The notebook, the message." She looked down. Then, slowly, she placed the notebook on the desk and pushed it toward I stepped forward, trembling. I picked it up. On the first page, they laughed. They filmed it. They put it online. The next pages were filled with names. Dozens of names, students, teachers, one by one, crossed out. Until the last one, Mr. Donald Ann Night Security. My blood ran cold. Doan, the guy I was filling in for. The regular guard. I looked back up and Megan was gone. The lights turned off. I stood there, alone. The notebook still in my hand. Outside, the sun was starting to rise. The temperature returned to normal. Room 305 looked ... like a room again, but every year since, around the same time, the name at the bottom of the list changes. And one day, I know, mine will be next. The basement hallway. I've worked at Sycamore Ridge High for 27 years. Started as a janitor, mopping floors and scrubbing graffiti off bathroom stalls. 3 years ago, I took over the night security gig when our old guy, Henry, retired. Said he couldn't take the basement anymore. He told me, "You'll hear things. Ignore them." I thought he was just messing with me. The basement of Sycamore Ridge is ... different. It runs beneath the main wing-long corridors. Unused lockers, an old drama room with dusty costumes, even a defunct furnace. No cameras, no windows. The kind of place kids dare each other to sneak into but never stay long. On my rounds, I usually skip it unless something triggers the motion sensor. I don't like the way it smells down there. Damp concrete and rust, but underneath, something like burnt paper. Last winter, during finals week, I heard it again. Clang, clang. I looked at the panel. Motion detected. Basement hallway. It was 152 M. I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward the basement stairwell. As soon as I opened the door, the temperature dropped. And I don't mean like, oh, it's chilly. I mean a sudden bone-deep cold, like walking into a meat locker. My breath fogged up instantly. I started down the stairs. The clanging was louder now, rhythmic. Angry. Clang, 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 clang. I stepped into the hallway, my boots echoing on the cement. The old lockers lined the wall, their paint chipped, most without locks. At the far end, under the flickering ceiling light, was a boy, thin, pale, dressed in a hoodie and jeans. He was standing in front of locker number 113, slamming it over and over again. Clang, clang. I raised my flashlight. "Hey, what the hell are you doing down here?" No response. I walked closer, cautiously. "You're not supposed to be here. Finals are over. What's your name?" Still nothing. He just kept slamming the locker. Clang, clang. By the time I was 5 feet behind him, I was sweating, even though it was freezing. My heart was pounding. I reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. He stopped. Slowly, he turned. His skin was too pale, his eyes black. Not just the pupils, the entire eye. Black voids, like 2 inkwells sunk into his skull. He looked at me and whispered, "I can't find my project. I'll fail again." Then he blinked and disappeared, right in front of me. I stood there for minutes, maybe hours. My knees were locked. I couldn't breathe. Finally, I stumbled upstairs, locked the basement, and sat in the front office until dawn, lights blazing. I didn't sleep the next day. I sat in my living room, blinds shut, trying to convince myself it was a hallucination, lack of sleep. Trick of the light, but the cold ... the sound. The eyes ... that wasn't my imagination. I dug through old-school maintenance logs. Turns out, locker number 113 belonged to a student named Daniel Holtz. Graduated well. Would have graduated in 2006. He died in that hallway. Seizure. Alone. The records say he stayed late to finish a final biology project. He was always under pressure. Perfect. Grades, full ride. But his home life was a mess. Dad left. Mom worked nights. He used to come to school early and stay late just to avoid being home. They found him the next morning, face down, gripping a binder full of failing grades and half-finished papers. Cause of death was a seizure likely triggered by exhaustion and stress. He never made it to graduation. His locker was never reassigned. I walked into the staff room and found Mrs. Templeton, who had been teaching biology since the late 90s. When I brought up Daniel, her face dropped. He was delicate, she said. Too much weight on his shoulders. He came to me the day before he died and said, "If I fail this, I fail everything." I told him to relax, that it wasn't the end of the world. But I could see it in his eyes. He didn't believe me. She looked down. They say his spirit still looks for that project, as if he can't move on without it. That night, I brought a chair down to the basement hallway, set it in front of locker 113. I sat there for hours. At 1:58 a.m., the temperature dropped again. This time I didn't flinch. He appeared. Same hoodie, same pale face, same slamming locker. Only this time, he turned to me without prompting. "Did you find it?" he asked. His voice was barely a whisper, but filled with desperation. "No," I said, "but I want to help." He paused, then vanished. I started going through the school archives, student work, stored projects, old assignments. I even asked Templeton to check her home files. Nothing. Then 3 nights later, I had a dream. I was walking down the basement hallway, but this time it was clean, lit, alive. I saw Daniel sitting in the drama room, building something with wire and cardboard. He looked happy. I woke up and headed back to the school. In the old drama room next to the lockers, behind a shelf of broken props, I found a dusty binder. Inside was a handwritten report, Human Brain Reactions to Stress. Signed, Daniel Holtz. It was dated the day before he died. I brought it down to locker number 113 and waited. At exactly 2 a.m., he appeared. I stood slowly. "Daniel ... Is this what you were looking for?" He looked at me, black eyes softening just a little. He stepped forward, reached out. His hand touched the binder. And for the first time, he smiled. The lights flickered once, then everything went still. The air warmed, my breath no longer fogged, and Daniel was gone. For good. It's been over a year. No more locker slamming. No more freezing cold. No more motion sensors going off at 2 a.m. I still work nights. Still pass that hallway, and every time I do, I nod to locker #113. Because even in death, that kid just wanted to pass.